So next up, we have a one-on-one chat between our wonderful Adrien and Jesús from Validating in LATAM, co-founder and CTO. Sorry about that. Go ahead and give you this. Give a big round of applause.
Thank you.
Hello. Yeah. All right. So the original interviewer couldn't make it. He got held back in a team retreat. So I had to, I guess, replace. I'm just interviewing, so I guess it's not a big deal. Thank you, Jesús, for joining us.
Thank you, Adrien, for organizing this.
So, do you want to share a bit your journey with SenseiNode and your growth in Latin America?
Sure, thank you. Well, my name is Jesús. Like they said, I'm the CTO of a company that's called SenseiNode. Basically, what we do is blockchain infrastructure in Latin America. We are the largest provider of validators and infrastructure as a whole in Latin America. We have more than 1.2 billion assets under management. So the way we started is, if you go back in the days when proof of stake just began, everyone that was validated was basically doing it at home. If you have a Raspberry Pi or a computer, so you would just spin it up at home or maybe a server. Now it's become a lot more professional, and we do it on different chains. So people rely on companies to actually have insurance and monitoring, and basically don't get slashed or don't lose their money when they are putting their stake at validating. So what we did is we started a company there wasn't anything like it in Latin America. There is in some other countries where we basically provide staking services for people in LATAM.
Cool, thank you. So what were the challenges, and what were the first blockchains you worked on, you validated?
Great. So we started obviously in the biggest proof of stake blockchain, which is Ethereum, and then we started also going to other chains, Polygon. Now we are big into the Cosmos ecosystem as well, Atom, Celestia, Persistence, and many others that you probably already know. There are some technical challenges when running nodes. I was just helping, I can remember someone set up their own node, but if you put that outside AWS or GCP or Azure, then it gets more complicated, especially if you take it to Latin America. So the biggest challenges were basically finding good data centers that have good connectivity and reliable electricity 24/7. And also the period, because we're far away. Some of the Cosmos chains, they like to have very tight block times, and that's usually considered something good. If you have say, for example, you have 5 blocks in 1 second. But for us, if you're building infrastructure, that's a bit of a challenge, because there is something called the handoff, when one validator sends his blocks, and then the next validator needs to pick up the hash and then produce the next block. And then if you only have 100 milliseconds to do so, then it can get complicated if you're sending a block from Singapore to Argentina. So that produces microforks. I don't know, some of you, when you get a transaction and it gets reverted, sometimes that's a little microfork. And you get that because blocks are very tight together. For me personally, it's better to have a 3-second block time, especially if you look at most of the blocks, they're not full blocks. Most of the blocks are empty. So that's the biggest challenge for sure.
Cool. And so you mentioned Say. Is there any other Cosmos specific challenges that you had when validating in Latin America?
Sure. Yeah, the Tendermint stack, which is the stack that Cosmos used to build chains, is it's quite a flexible stack, so it's good. So some of the teams, what they do is they take the stack and they start tweaking it, changing configurations. And I think that's where we get some problems. The main problem is it's peering and block times. If you look at say, for example, for us was a big challenge because you needed to be in Europe or in the US for you to be able to sync. If blocks are too fast and they're faster than where you can download them, then you're going to be constantly out of sync. And that can happen with Cosmos. I don't think it's a Cosmos thing per se. I think it's just, when you get the Tendermint and you modify it and you try to, you try to do too much to a code base that's already good. And, if you can feel it, if you're like in Latin America, Africa, or Southeast Asia, it's just the network gets very unstable.
Okay, cool. What's your vision on the current state of the blockchain ecosystem in Latin America, apart from validation or related to that?
Cool. So, I don't know if any of you have been to Latin America before, or maybe you're from Latin America. I know there's some people from Brazil. Brazil is maybe not a good example because they have the real, which is kind of stable fiat currency. But for like most of Latin America, especially if you come from Argentina or Venezuela, they have like a really unstable fiat currency. So that kind of made cryptocurrency really grow. Not volume based. There's probably more volume in the US, China, and Europe, but user based. We work with a wallet which is called the Lemon wallet. They have 3 million users just in Argentina alone. So there's a lot of people that use cryptocurrency as a way not just to escape inflation, but also to send money abroad. Because if you live in Argentina or Venezuela, you can't just send a wire transfer to Germany. It's still a challenge. Outside Europe, if you want to send that transaction to the US, it's also a challenge. So imagine in Latin America, it's like a bigger challenge. If you're like in Peru and you want to send money to Thailand, it's like you have to use crypto, right? Like, there's no other way to do it. Like, I don't know any other way to do it. It might be really expensive. So what happened is like there is a lot of crypto users in Latin America, and we're trying to capitalize on that, especially in the Cosmos ecosystem. What we're seeing is a lot of like meetups and hackathons like this one, and there's a lot of interest. Like a lot of people show up, so we're really excited of actually implementing our services in Latin America, which is basically going to the banks, going to the wallets like Revolut, for example, like they're like Revoluts in Latin America, and saying, hey, I can give you the node, I can help you integrate, Cosmos or Polygon or whatever, and you can give it to your users, and you can give your users APY so that they can stake. Obviously, on the back is going to our nodes, and they can get also a nice APY for holding their tokens.
Lemon, you mentioned Lemon. It's what
It's
type of
Lemon.
wallet?
It's a wallet that it's I would say similar to Revolut, okay. But there is quite a lot of neobanks, and they all have like crypto integrated. And most of the people, at least in Argentina, which is our company is based in Argentina, they get their salary, they get their wage, and they immediately change it to USDC or USDT.
But it's not self-custodial, or is it self-custodial?
Lemon is not self-custodial. They use, I think, the custodial is called Copper, which is like one of these MPC custodials. There are some self-custodial wallets also, but Lemon is not one of them. It's just more like a bank.
So it's the one that has the most traction is the self-custodial wallet?
Yes, sadly, yes.
Okay, yeah. That makes sense, I guess. What about regulation? Like, you got Milei now in Argentina going crazy.
Yeah, we have Milei, the lion.
You're very on Trump.
Yeah. Well, I would say that, in Argentina and Latin America as a whole, there's not much regulation. And that can be good or it can be bad. I think it was good in the sense that everyone was just doing, whatever. There is also not a lot of like the IRS of Argentina is not as efficient as it is here or in the US as well. So, everyone kind of just does what they want. Now with Milei, what he's doing is opening up like a lot of like the economy, and basically just like regulating what is already happening. Like most of the people already have crypto, and you cannot like avoid that or fight it. And they have a lot of crypto because there was no regulation. Now what they're trying to do is like to regulate it, but they're being really open about doing it. And let's say in theory, he eliminated the Argentinian IRS. So, most of the countries, when they try to regulate, they just really want to, charge you some taxes. So we'll see how that goes. Milei's only been 1 year in Argentina. And the problem in Latin America is that in 3 years he might lose and then everyone will change. We are either very far to the left or very far to the right. We don't usually stick to one program. So we'll have to see, but I definitely think that, people will keep holding their crypto and being in crypto because it's the only way that makes them like kind of survive financial crisis.
Okay, I'll switch back to SenseiNode. So here, like, we had some notes about like expansion and so on, and just wanted to have a rough idea, like, compared to competitors, basically, like what's, let's say, like the top 5, like,
yeah,
how comparable are they in size to you? And
the companies, like the blockchain infrastructure companies, they've grown a lot, like, I think in the last 3 years, but they're not very well known because they're not retail. Like, we don't go to like clients and customers to offer them staking. They usually, they have conversations with banks, you have conversations with institutions. So, but some of you might have heard there is a big, like, our French competitor is called Killing. Killing is quite big. Block Demon from the US is probably the biggest
LATAM as well.
Company that does blockchain infrastructure. You also have Figment. So I think those would be like the 3 biggest. And then we have a lot of like companies like SenseiNode. Those on the institutional level, but you probably know more about, for example, Nodes Guru, because Nodes Guru does go to retail. And also Cafecito. There are some in the Cosmos ecosystem that are quite good at catching like retail stake.
Cafecito.
Cafecito is quite big, actually. It's actually bigger than us.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. So you guys planning to expand? I guess the market is ripe for expansion.
Sure. Yeah, what we're thinking now is also bringing our operations to Africa and Southeast Asia. I was recently in Bangkok at the DevCon, and I think there's also a lot of users there. That on like the regional expansion side. But on the institutional level, what we want to achieve is we want to be the first. We are already the first. We want to maintain our position in Latin America. So when the big banks come in, like they're doing in the US and ETFs and the big banks, they're doing that in Europe. Hopefully they will ring us up and we can provide staking service, like professional staking services for them.
Okay, that makes sense. And what about so it's hard to I like Cosmos, but I'm still sort of wrapping up my head around what's going on and how active is the community, how big is the community in different countries in Europe, and how is the situation in Latin America, more or less. Can you give us a brief overview of where is the heart, or where is?
Sure, I think Cosmos is usually viewed as a and I saw this in CosmWasm as well. It was in Dubai recently, and there's a lot of gaming, and there's a lot of real world assets in Cosmos. And I think this is because you have very fast change, like I said before. So technically it's a challenge, but it's good if you're having a game and you want to trade like an NFT that is like a sword. You want that to be fast. In Ethereum, you don't want to wait 12 seconds for a block to be mined or whatever, or even Polygon is 4 seconds. So you want that experience to be fast. So I would say the Cosmos ecosystems in Latin America, and I think in the whole world, is viewed as a big gaming and real world assets platform. At least this is what is being promoted as. Compared to Ethereum, which is more institution, is more slow. There someone was saying that Bitcoin is for holding value and saving your your value. Cosmos is for dApps, and Ethereum is trying to do both. But I think that's kind of how Cosmos is viewed in Latin America. There is also a lot of builders, a lot of people that live in Argentina or live in South America and they work abroad because crypto and the blockchain ecosystem is an opportunity for them to work for people in Europe or in the US, get a salary like in a good currency and live in Argentina, which is quite cheap. So there is a lot of like developers and builders as well.
And what role do you play with the community, like whether in person or online? How do you guys contribute?
Usually, it's funny because we have a lot of similarities with what Noah was saying about grants. We actually had a few grants as well. When we ask for like a foundation for them to delegate us, like for example, we are a validator in the SEI network and this foundation is delegating to us, they don't just expect us to, run the node and validate. They also want us to do like community events and, promote their blockchains in Latin America. So we do a lot of events like this one. We do at least once a month in Argentina. We do meetups, we do events. We sponsor events, we do Twitter spaces, we do hackathons. We have a lot of documentation if you go to docs.sensainode.com on how to run nodes in Spanish and in Portuguese, also in English. So we do a lot of community, and I think this is like kind of old school when you used to be like a validator on the first chains like depots like Steam and BitShares. They wanted you not just to run nodes, but also to promote the ecosystem.
So Steam, the blogging platform.
Yes.
Cool. So you were working on Steam?
I was at the beginning. I was a validator on Steam. I knew Dan Larimer back in the days, and also BitShares. I think, like I said before, like all validators, they were like one person running the operations. And, as time went by, things got like more serious, like all of the blockchain ecosystem. And then, you have to like run with a company and so on, pay taxes. Yeah. And then now I have a company. But at the beginning, I used to just run it at home.
Yeah, that's cool. Sorry, guys. Just like trying to skim through this. What about like technological advancements, like innovations, upcoming innovations? What are you excited about? And like, so one thing like that I'd like to understand is like how do you solve, so like those problems that you have, I guess, like sort of the
Sure.
precarious quality of
Sure.
infrastructure and
yeah, mainly like most. I'll answer that first, and then I would tell you what I'm excited about. But mainly, what like I don't know, like it's very different to be like a smart contract developer, which I think many of you are, and then it's different to like run infrastructure. It's more like a DevOps job, and like networking, like a lot of networking. So what we've done with different like Cosmos changes and other changes, like if you don't have good peering and you set up a node in Costa Rica, and then what you do is like you try to bring that latency down, and that node you try to bring it to nodes in other parts. So we connect it directly. You can add in the configurations, you can add the peerings, you can add like your own peers. So we'll put a peer on Miami, Florida, which is like the best peering for like all of Latin America, and then we take it to New York and then New York, London. And then we just try to like build like a web of our own nodes that peer together. And I think that helps us have like a better performance, and it also helps other people that connect to our peers. So that's one way that we try help improve the performance. We've also talked to like the foundations and tell them like, hey, I think you should change some configurations of the blockchain, because sometimes they're like misconfigured or they could be configured differently. And I'm really excited about like interoperability. I think Osmosis and is doing a good job, and I think they're launching a product called Polaris, where you can just like operate on like different chains and layers seamlessly without you noticing, and doing bridges and all of what they just mentioned before, all the friction that you have on blockchain right now. Like you have to take your token, you have to bridge it, you have to create a wallet recovery, you have 1,000 recovery phrases. So I think there is a lot of work being done on account abstraction and just making the process like more smooth. And I think that's gonna get here like in a year or two. It's just gonna be really easier to use blockchain.
Cool. Thank you, Jesús.
Thank you very much, Adrien. Thank you guys for listening.
We've got a question in the back. I'll give you the microphone. If you can. Yeah.
Hello. I was wondering if you have in SenseiNode as a company, like a theoretical framework to approach different blockchains in case, like risk assessments to know where to put nodes into, and yes, like if you have that previously or during the phase. Yes, I just want to know what's the logistics on that.
Sure. Basically, how the process goes is we either get invited to run infrastructure for a blockchain. Usually, these new blockchains, like it's crazy. Like what they were saying, there's like literally hundreds of networks being launched every day. And if they want to be decentralized, you will need validators in different parts of the world and people running RPC nodes so developers can connect to the blockchain and so on. The risk assessment part is more on the custody of the funds and the delegations. But I think most of the blockchains now, they have a built-in delegating process on the whole blockchain. At least Cosmos and Tendermint is like that. So the risk is more about us getting a slash. We're actually in talks with different insurance companies that will cover that in case that something does happen. And then we recently, there are certifications that you can get, like the SOC Type 2 certification, which would be like the ICO 27001 in the rest of the world. We just completed the SOC Type 2, which just tells you encryption of keys, least privilege access, and just all these principles that you should follow to manage a secure operation, especially when you're running in our case, over $1 billion of assets under management.
Okay. What's the standard that covers this?
We did the SOC Type 2, which is a security certification, but you can also do the ICO 27001. So it's just certifications that that you do for companies to ensure that you have all the processes in place in case something goes down south.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
You mentioned other validators as Nodes Guru that are more retail focused, you said. What does that mean? Do you mostly focus on enterprise, giving you your funds to stake?
Sure. Yeah, some validators, they would take, if you have 2 Ethereum, for example, and then you can, usually you will go to Lido for that if you have only 2 ETH. Even if you have 32 ETH, I'm just putting Ethereum as an example, but it could be any change. And then, if you go to a client and then let's just run numbers easily, 1 Ethereum validator is going to be $120,000, for example, and you will get 3% annually out of that, which is roughly $4,000. So we will charge you 10% of that, which will be only $400 per year. So for us, it's not the scale that we operate on. So we prefer someone who has over $1 million or $2 million, because infrastructure providers like us, we run on percentages. So we're gonna make 1% of, it's gonna be 10% of whatever the blockchain is making. But there is a lot of validators that they've been running for a while, and they do focus on retail. When I say retail, it's just someone that has probably less than $1 million to stake. And I think Nodes Guru is one of the biggest and one that has a lot of my respect. Also, Everstake is quite big at doing that. And Cafecito, who runs a Stake Cito as well. But you can see them, they're all, in the Cosmos ecosystem, the main ones are, the main ones, which is good, are the ones that run validators for retail. Because, we are usually in the background, so you might not even see our name on it, because we do white label.
All right, thank you, Jesus from
Thank you,
SenseiNode.
guys.